Welcome to True You Ministries. I'm Stacy Echeverria, your pastoral counselor. I am a licensed pastoral counselor whose own journey has taught me the importance of having a safe place to discuss the harder issues of life. I'm so grateful that you've joined me this week. You can learn more about me and my heartfelt desire to help people much like yourself who may be at a place of pain and confusion by calling me at 626-461-3344. That's 626-461-3344, or feel free to email me at info@trueyouministries.com. Now, sit back, listen, watch, and enjoy the show. And welcome to True You Ministries. I am really excited about the guest that I have on my show today. We will be speaking about breaking up with fear. And today I have with me Carolyn Murphy. Hi, Carolyn. It's great having you on the show.
Hi, good morning. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. And before we get started into the topic, I broke up with fear. Let me share with you a little bit about Carolyn. So, Carolyn Murphy is the founder and CEO of Firm Foundations Community Outreach, LLC, dedicated to helping individuals reclaim their lives after trauma. As the mind shift coach and author of God, Why Did You Save Me? She empowers others to embrace freedom and purpose. Carolyn holds a BA in organizational leadership. She's pursuing an MBA and is a Tennessee certified peer recovery specialist. In her downtime, she enjoys cruises, music, walks, and action packed movies. Again, Carolyn, welcome to the show. I'd love to start with having you share a little bit about your own personal story around this topic, and that is breaking up with fear.
I was born to teenage parents. They were 16 years old. I was born during a time where children were seen and not heard. So I was already muzzled. Early age, I think between the ages of 4 and 6, I experienced SA, and which silenced me really for what I thought the rest of my life. Later on, during my teen years, I experienced SA again and just felt unloved, unheard, and unwanted.
Thank you for sharing that. For our audience that is listening and watching, can you share a little bit about what SA is?
SA is sexual assault. To be more specific, I suffered at the hands of an adult man when I was between 4 and 6, molestation. And later on, I was raped by a classmate when I was, I think, senior in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And for those that may be watching and listening, this might be triggering for some of you. And so if you need to step away, please step away. What could be helpful to you to regulate is to take some deep breaths. And if you are a believer, calling upon those scriptures that might be helpful to you to bring peace to your soul again. We may be covering some things in this episode that could be triggering for you. So again, take time away, come back to this, or reach out to us. I know that everyone suffers from trauma. We all have trauma, whether they're big T traumas like earthquakes, massive fires. I'm thinking about California. We've got hurricanes going on in the south, or little T traumas, which are consistent chronic abuse. So trauma is trauma, and we all need to be able to navigate through that. And I'm so grateful that at this point in time, we have a number of practitioners that are available that are trauma informed, right? And I'm actually doing some training right now about trauma informed care as well. So again, we want you to make sure that you're operating in self-care. If you need to step away and listen to this later on, please do. Okay. Talk to me about the grip of fear and the impact that it had on your life around your own story.
When it comes to fear, those seeds that were sown came up with fear, guilt, and shame. Fear really drove my life. it just consumed me. Fear of
Hmm.
abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of the
Hmm.
unknown. There were a
Right.
number of fears that I suffered. And because of
Mhm.
that, I refuse to step out of my comfort zone, quote unquote, comfort zone. So the
Mhm.
fear, a lot of times, the fear, we build walls trying to protect ourselves. Then we
Right.
call it our comfort zone. But little
Right.
did we know that the quote unquote comfort zone really is the prison that,
Right.
and so the Lord started showing me that I was held in my own prison, but I was bound and chained by my
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, and that guilt and that shame, and I know with a lot of the clients that I work with, particularly around specific addictions, if you will, there's a lot of shame. And guilt is one thing, and I've talked about this on other episodes where guilt says, "Oof, I've done something wrong." And shame says, "I am that something that's wrong." So it's internalized and it's very personal. And we know that with shame, that originates with Satan. And it's very isolating being in that shame. What were some of the beliefs that started running for you when you experienced what you did? I know I do a lot of false belief work with clients, and that is when something happens, we go into this place of it's a protective mode, right? And that protective mode is there to keep you safe from being hurt again. So it could be, say, you had a teacher in school that didn't like you or said that you were a bad kid or whatever it was. And then you believe that I can't trust authority figures because this is how they make me feel. So that's a false belief system. So what were some did you identify any false beliefs that initiated after the experiences that you had? And then we can get into later on, how did you end up breaking free from those belief systems?
During my childhood, I received a lot of negative talk. You ain't gonna be nothing. You're gonna have a baby by the time you get 16, like my mom did. You're dumb and you're not cute.
Mm,
Just all those
mhm.
things. I didn't realize that stuff really took root, but I had the mentality when you said that I wasn't going to do something, I made sure that I did do it, but still not
Right.
knowing that took root because that
Yeah.
same negative talk that was given to me, I started saying
Mhm.
it to myself, you're stupid. You should have known better than that. So
Right.
it really takes root when you don't
Yeah.
realize it.
Absolutely. And with it taking root, it can be very isolating. It won't allow you to step out into the
Mhm.
things, like if you are a believer, into the things that the Lord has called you to. And in that belief system, what's driving it and what drives all of it is fear. And it
Mhm.
manifests in different ways for people as
Yes.
well. So you can cope in ways that are unhealthy for you, right? Because those lies are so painful. And so we figure out ways of how do we stop that pain from happening.
Yes. One of the effects of the fear is that I did not allow myself to get close to anyone. It was like I
Right.
kept people at arm's length because in my fear, I thought, okay, if you really got to know me, you would leave me. There's that fear of
Right.
abandonment also. And then I thought I could control my emotions like a switch. And
Right.
to a degree, I did. But
Mhm.
from the
Mhm.
first sexual assault that I experienced, I learned to keep deep secrets. I learned to wear a mask, and my mask was the smiling face. So you never knew
Right.
anything that was going on
Right.
with me.
And mask is also known as a protective personality. And so initially those happen in a traumatic incident and it's there to help keep you safe. Until it becomes so large and it gets in the way of having the abundant, full life that the Lord has for you. So, share a little bit more about how this fear manifested in your personal, professional, and or your faith journey.
For me, the mask, I never did allow myself to feel my emotions. That was another thing. And even into my late 20s, if not 30s. I
Mm.
did not believe that God even loved me because during
Okay.
in between the times of suffering the sexual assault, I lost three siblings to
Wow.
death. The first sibling passed from brain tumors when I was 2, she was 1.
Okay.
And the last two siblings passed in a house fire in 1981. And
Right.
I was 8 years old then.
Oh.
So from the time I experienced the first sexual assault till I was 8, my nightly prayer was, Lord, let me die in my sleep. Because I just didn't want to
Mm,
keep living the life that I was living, just
right.
constantly being unheard, unloved, and
Mhm.
unwanted. And so
Mhm.
once the house fire happened and my two siblings perished, my prayer stopped and I began to question God, why did you save me out of the fire?
Right.
Because that was my
Right.
opportunity to die.
Thank you for sharing that. And so then what was the turning point for you?
The turning point, it began to start shifting when I got to college because that was
Mhm.
the first time I experienced support group and group coaching and things, group therapy. But I really didn't take it for what it was really worth. I
Okay.
sat in there and listened to others wanting to share, but I was
Yeah.
too afraid to share. And even in my childhood, I was that listening ear for everyone else, but I didn't
Sure.
have it.
Right.
So my great turning point was in 2023 when the Lord gave to me, I broke up with fear. And when
Mhm.
I said that declaration,
Mhm.
when the business started, that's
Mhm.
when the book came out and all these other things that I am currently doing. But God has helped me to realize just because you said that declaration, you still
Yeah.
have to do it day by day. That is
Correct.
a
Right.
choice.
It is, absolutely, and that's really key. It is a choice,
Mhm.
absolutely. And so you have a book, God, Why Did You Save Me? And would you share a little bit about just a little summary with regard to what your book is about?
It's a snapshot. It's 7 chapters, and it's really all the things that I just told you.
Oh,
From the rocky relationship that I had with my mom,
mhm,
because not until I turned in my early 40s that I realized my mom was battling her own trauma. So I
right.
grew up thinking my mom hated me. And one day I got the nerve to ask her, Mom, why did you hate me?
Mhm.
And she said, I never hated you, with tears coming out of her
Oh,
eyes. She said, I just didn't want you to go down the road that I traveled.
wow. And I bet that was really empowering for you, that there was a lie that you believed for so long, and then you took the risk in asking your mom the question, and then it no longer had power over you.
Yeah, because prior to that, I hated her. I
Right.
literally hated her because she always appeared to choose men over me. It was just a multitude of things. But like I
Right.
said, once the Lord stopped me and said, "Look at her,"
Yeah.
and He really meant for me to look at her in the spirit. He said, "Dude, she looked like somebody." It was me. It was
Wow. I
me.
know.
So I
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
"Wow."
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
taught me, when you see people acting out, it's
Mhm.
because something deeper.
Absolutely.
And that helped me to say, okay, God, I'm no longer getting mad at people because they act out. I just know to
Right.
pray at that point.
That's a really great point. I remember years ago when I was on my healing journey, when I first started my healing journey, and we're all on a journey, right? We've not arrived.
Mm,
And I remember something happening at work years and years ago. It was some things that were said. And it was really the Lord, where I did not take on what was being said to me. I did not take it personally, and I was able to see them the way the Lord sees them, and through his eyes. While I'm not saying it was okay for them to have said what they said, I didn't have to have a reaction to it, and just keep it in its proper place, and that is, that's their stuff, not mine. And do I get it right all the time? No. But it's really something that we can all do, right? So that we can have peace in our lives. And that is, we get to choose what we're going to die on the hill for, and not everything's worth dying on the hill for. And so, what are you going to let go? What are you going to go? All right, you know what? This person's got some wounding here. That's what's going on here. We can explain what's going on and maybe attempt to understand what is going on. But again, I'm saying we're not excusing it, but we are creating healthy boundaries for ourselves by not engaging in it. And sometimes it's just a quick question where it's an observation where we can say, it seems like you're having a really bad day. Is everything all right? And that is a way that the Lord can use us to let the other person know, hey, I see you and I care about what's going on with you. And I understand that why you're reacting to me in the way that you're reacting to me is because of your pain.
I do agree.
Wouldn't
Um,
this world be a lot better if we could
oh,
do that?
yes. Yes, it's not all about us, but that's
Right.
hard to see when you are in your emotions. And that's what
Correct.
was coming up to me when you were speaking. The Lord was
Yeah.
reminding me about the scripture, walk not in the flesh, but in the spirit. And the
Yes.
Lord showed me that is a
Yeah.
commandment, not a suggestion.
Correct.
So when you're walking
Correct.
in the spirit, you're all in your emotions. Everything is about
Right.
you. It's bad.
And we're in
It's
the
pretty
flesh,
bad.
right? Yeah. 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 And in the feelings of things, and I just had a guest the other day. I had a recording with him, and we were talking about feelings. And I said, you can't trust your feelings. They keep changing all the time. And no wonder we have so many mental health issues, is because people are not able to manage their feelings in a healthy way, and so it tends to escalate. Share with us some scriptures that you found to be really helpful in your journey to healing and breaking up with fear. What were some that you just hid in your heart and you called upon those words that helped you get grounded again?
Oh, wow. That one particular, walk not in the flesh, but in the spirit. Be ye transformed. Let's see. And what is that? John 14, 1 through 5. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe
Right.
in God, believe also in me. I
Right.
literally, just a few of them, but I literally turned those into affirmations as well.
Yeah.
And then I think the big one is trust not in your own self.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me because I have it plastered on my wall. Because that's like you said earlier, you cannot trust your emotions because they're constantly changing and then they
Right.
lie to you.
Absolutely. And I know there's some others on fear in 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit
Yes.
of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind. And also Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. I have read that there are 365 scriptures on fear. And that number is not an accident
Yes.
because we deal with it constantly every day. We were born into it. Let's be honest, we were born into fear and shame. When we think about the garden and what happened in the garden with Adam and Eve, the doubt came in. Did God really say? And in that, and underneath doubt, there is fear. And then Adam and Eve, because their eyes were opened, they realized they were naked and then they hid from God. And so there's that shame. So we're born into all of that. But I really love the fact that the Lord has given us his word, which is truth that sets us free. And we can depend on his word and rely on it and stand on it because his word never, ever changes. Do we get further and further depth of meaning as we are on our journey of walking with the Lord? Absolutely. So you have another facet or another layer of it that's revealed. But his word never changes. And I tell people, I'm like, he's the only one that you can take to the bank and there's a return because the world has nothing to offer when it comes to stuff like this. Yeah. When you are coaching individuals that are in the grip of fear, what are some of the practical strategies that you use? You just share with us some strategies you use, and then we'll get into how then can we walk those out in a practical way?
When it comes to coaching someone that is embedded in fear, I definitely encourage them to cultivate their relationship with the Lord,
Okay.
because a lot of the times we have this surface relationship with God, and because of that, we're not truly living or walking in the Word. God told me years ago that we must eat, sleep, and breathe Him. And that includes everything from listening to the word, quoting the word, reading the word, being in the house of God with other believers. And then I also say out loud your affirmations as well as reading the word out loud, because it feeds your soul. And
Right.
then the biggest thing outside of that is self-care. And self-care is everything from just walks in the park to looking at a
Mm-hmm.
comedy movie. So that's my help statement to Christian women, to prioritize their self care without guilt.
I like that. Prioritizing your self care without guilt. And women have a tendency to do so much for others, to pour a lot out. And so, one of the things that I want the women to understand is in order for you to continue giving, you need to be filled up. And that self-care is absolutely part of that. Right. I had a massage this week. So that was part of my self-care. That worked for me. I haven't had one in a really long time. And it was really wonderful being able to do that. But anything that just fills your cup, that self-care. Does it have to be going to a day spa or a weekend here and there, whatever? It could be something so simple where I know for me, hiking is a great self-care thing that I do once a month because I'm in nature and that's where the Lord meets me. It's where I hear him and feel him the most. And nature speaks to me, and it's God's creation. So, whatever works for you, make sure that whatever it is, that you're consistent in doing that. Consistency is going to be really key. So, share with us, Carolyn, there's the DARE framework. If you wouldn't mind going through that with us, I'd love to hear more about that.
Dare, D for decide.
Hmm.
Decide that you're going to end your toxic relationship with fear. And the
Hmm.
A is acknowledge, where is the
Hmm.
fear coming from? Is it
Right.
from childhood? Is
Hmm.
it from someone that said evil things to you? And then R for replace.
Hmm.
Place those negative thoughts with the word of
Right.
God, with
Right.
positive affirmations. And then
Right.
E, execute bold action. You can acknowledge, you can decide that you're going to break up with fear. You can even start replacing the thoughts. But if you don't start executing outside of replacing the thoughts, you're going to still be stuck. And so that's my
Right.
4-step plan, help
Hmm.
women of God to start moving out of fear, breaking up
Right.
with fear, because God has shown me, as long as we're living in the spirit of fear, He cannot use us the
Right.
way that He really wants to use us. Like the characters in the Bible, they did
Right.
mighty things. These are regular people that did mighty
Right.
things, but that's because they
Right.
moved out of their fear.
Absolutely. And so the first step really is number one, we've got to make a conscious decision that we're going to break up with fear, that we're going to confront it. And here's the thing, it can be scary and it can create a lot of anxiety, but you move anyway. Because what I tell my clients is there's this thing that I teach them about a double bind. If I do change, if I don't change. Yeah. If I do move toward, say, fear, oh, I might end up feeling even more fear about it, more anxiety about it. Maybe I won't do this. But if you don't, the question I ask my clients is if you don't move toward whatever problem or situation that you're looking to resolve or looking to have healing around, is this: what will your life look like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And is that the life you want? Because it isn't going to get better if you don't take a step. So that requires a certain amount of risk, but it also requires a lot of faith to go ahead and move into that. And there's so many wonderful scriptures. I love it in Joshua where he says to Joshua, "Be bold and courageous. I am with you." One of God's names is Emmanuel. God with us. He is with us in it. And so taking that step, so it requires a lot of intentionality. But there was something that you mentioned when you were in college, and it was group therapy. And one of the things I think is really important when we're in the journey on our walk with God, yes, there is a personal walk with Jesus, but then he's also created us to be in community. And so the enemy, Satan, would have you be isolated as much as possible. And God wants us to be in community with him and with other believers. And that could be scary for some because you've been hurt in relationships. But I'm here to tell you, you're going to find healing in relationships. So there's your double bind. I know that I have been hurt in relationships, but I have grown and healed so much in the relationships that the Lord has brought to me as well. And I'm sure you have as well, Carolyn. What other strategies do you employ with the people that you work with? I know there's journaling and self-reflection, and share a little bit about that. You did talk about a little bit with the speaking those affirmations, but also prayer. So share a little bit about both of these.
Yes, and that's why deepening or and cultivating your relationship with the Lord is imperative because that's where you draw your strength from. And like you said earlier, facing your demons or these fears is going to take a deepening relationship with the Lord. Journaling is definitely something because I call it a data dump. You just get it
Mhm.
all out of your head and put it on paper and do it as consistently as possible. Like you said, coped with a lot of prayer. And
Mhm.
so if you're anything like I was, journaling sporadically, praying sporadically, there was no consistency there. There was no
Right.
intentionality there. And I
Right.
had to learn the hard way down through the years that I needed to prioritize God. A lot of times we have our life, we try to fit God in around our life, but that's not how he wants it. He wants to be dead center and fit everything else around him. And that's what
Egg.
I did not do.
Exactly. Exactly. I like that you said that. He needs to be dead center. And our life will need to fit around him, not him around our lives. And there have been a number of times where I've looked at my calendar and I don't like overbooking, and I won't overbook, and this meeting, that meeting, here, there, whatever. And they are good things. And yeah, I suffer from chronic insomnia and chronic fatigue. And sometimes my energy levels are just tapped out. And I'll just say, Lord, move something off the calendar. Just move it off. And it isn't anything that I have to do. The people that I might have meetings with will say, I'm so sorry, an emergency came up, and the appointment gets rescheduled for another time. Sometimes I have 4 meetings in one day, and I'm going, I cannot possibly do all these meetings. And they get rescheduled. And I'm like, thank you, Lord. He knows what we need. He knows what we need. And I'm so grateful that he will do that because I keep my commitments, but then I also know that I have limited resources for myself, right? I've limited energy as well. And I want to be able to be present with the people that I am with. So, yeah, that having our lives, God at the center, and working our lives around him. And I really like too in that, and that is saying yes to the things that the Lord wants us to say yes to. And there's going to be things that we need to say no to. And they might be really good things, but they may not be the right thing at the right time. So everything in season, right? So I love this idea here that you've got of an engagement idea. One way to break up with fear is to stop dating its lies. So, what's the biggest lie fear has told you? And you shared a couple. Is there one that continues to keep coming to the surface for you, Carolyn?
Yes, it's really too that I'm not enough and nobody is going to listen to me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
battle that, and
Yeah.
that comes when that's my signal that I'm wavering out of the spirit and into my emotions. So
Yeah.
I'm able to recognize now when I'm swerving. Sometimes I
Yeah.
don't catch myself, but
Yeah.
that's how I realize everything begins to annoy me. And it's,
Yeah.
Carolyn, you must be too far over in the flesh.
Oh my gosh. For me, what tends to crop up from time to time is that imposter syndrome. And that is you're not really good at what you do. And there's others that are doing what you're doing and they're doing it way better. And I firmly know that the Lord has called me to what I do, and I have clients who appreciate what I do offer. But I think I think part of that imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of women struggle with, and that is comparison, comparing to others and what others are doing. And, oh, they're so successful over there, and I'm doing something similar, but why don't I have the followers? Or am I not making the kind of money that this person's making over there? And that's because you're in a different lane. And if you're only doing it for followers and money, then you may need to rethink why you're doing it, right?
Yes, yes, I agree. And that's something that I had to battle with last year because some people were coming to me, how many books you've sold? And I
Yes. Yeah.
purposely kept my mind off of that because
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a rabbit hole. I
Yeah.
purposely don't even have access to the number of books. I told my publisher,
Oh, wow.
when I get if I want to know, I'll just, hey, how's the book going? And she'll
Yeah.
let me know that
Yeah.
it's selling. But I had to stop myself when it comes to the social media, the
Yeah.
books, and I
Yeah.
had to stop again in my emotions. And I
Right.
said, Lord, you sent me to
Yeah.
this assignment. And
Right.
so I had to stop and say, Lord, let the book get in the hands of those that you deem that's
Yeah.
necessary. And the same
Yeah.
thing with my posts and talks. And
Right.
it's not
Right.
about, so when I start thinking it's concentrating on that, it's not about me. It's not about God,
Right.
turns into it's about me. And
Right.
I had to hurry up and switch my thinking. Lord, this is about
Yeah.
you, not me.
Yeah. I like that. When I started my podcast a couple of years ago, I was on the radio, and that helped me launch the podcast. And I remember I was on a podcast platform, and I had reached out to someone because I wanted to have a pre-interview chat with them to consider coming onto my podcast. And one of the questions that they had asked was, how many downloads do you have and how many followers do you have? And I said, I don't think my podcast is going to be the right podcast for you at this point, because that's what they were concerned about. And for me, what really matters for me in doing these shows and having different people on here that can help the audience that I do have is, if it reaches one person and it helps them, that's why I'm doing it. And I leave the rest to God. I had a friend ask me, "Why have you not gone viral?" And I said, "That's not what I'm doing it for. I don't need to go viral. I need to reach one person, and that's it. And if it stops being fun for me, then I'll stop doing it."
Yes.
I'm like, I just want to put out good product. I want to put out good information that maybe someone will say, "Hey, I've heard a lot about fear, but I haven't heard it quite like this." And it unlocks something for them. And that's why I
Yes.
do what I do.
Yes.
Yes. So as we begin to wrap up, and I so appreciate everything that you've shared so far. There's so many nuggets, Carolyn. What are some things that you would like to focus on, to emphasize, just having some nuggets that people can walk away with, some encouraging words, and a call to action for our listeners as well?
Outside of making the declaration, I broke with fear. My signature phrase is, your purpose is greater than the pain. Many of us are
Yeah.
struggling with so much pain, emotionally, mentally, physically. And and it goes back to why God told me that the crust or the bedrock of your ministry is cultivating relationship with me,
Right.
because without him, you're not going to be able to do it. And
I agree.
the Lord even told me, you will have success, but it's only going to go so far. It's not going to be
Hmm.
lasting, and it's not going to be fulfilling. And we've seen people who have
Hmm.
tried to do things outside of God and it's not fulfilling.
Right.
So outside of practice your self-care, make God the center of your life,
Yeah.
and that your
Yeah.
purpose is greater than the pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That right, fear is not our identity, that our identity is in Christ. We don't have to do this perfectly, right? And I tell people, and I love, my husband gets these visions from the Lord. I love these. These are so practical, right? The Lord wants us to move, and He wants us to move in faith, to step out, right? And to trust Him in whatever it is that He's calling you to, wherever it is that He's taking you. And if you think He's leading you in a particular direction, stop overthinking it. Take the step. And my husband said, the Lord is like a GPS system. If you make a wrong turn, He will reroute you. But He requires that we move, right? So we be obedient to Him calling us. So we move, and we may not be sure if this is where we want to go or where He's got us going, but He will reroute us. So it's being obedient to Him, and He will never lead us down a wrong path. He never will. We know who will. So, some of the things that I do talk about in earlier episodes is, so what voice are you going to listen to? And we get to choose. There's three of them. There's our own voice, and our own voice usually gets us into trouble without any help from the enemy, the devil. But then we listen to his voice, and then there's the Lord's voice. And if you're not sure the distinction between the Lord's voice and the enemy's voice, it means you need to know who God is. What is His character? Right? Because His character never ever changes. He's the God of peace. He never creates chaos for us. It will always be clear for us. If you don't have peace and you're in fear and you've got that anxiety and you're stressed out and you're confused, you're either listening to your own voice or you're listening to Satan. And when we talked about being in the Word, when we're in the Word of God, we get to know who God is. And when we're spending time with Him, we get to know His character and nature, so that when the other voice starts to speak, we're able to be very clear who's talking to us. Carolyn, do you, is do you have any free resources, or what would be the next step for our listeners to get in touch with you?
My landing page, carolynjmurphy.com.
Okay.
I have a workbook on there. I think it's called I Broke Up with Fear, because
Hmm.
I'm constantly creating and I haven't actually uploaded anything. And then, of course, I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Christian Women Overcoming
Okay.
Trauma. And
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
about to host my first workshop. And so
Okay.
when I say I'm breaking up with fear, I'm
Hmm.
literally in the midst of breaking up with fear, because
Okay.
my fear is being in front of the camera and worried
Right.
about the thoughts that people have, about me or what they're saying. So I'm
Hmm.
stepping out of my fear and hosting my first workshop, which is called Faith Over Fear.
Oh, nice. And is this going to be on Facebook?
It's on Eventbrite, but
Okay.
it's a event on Eventbrite, and it is $47,
Okay.
and there's a limited seats, and it's
Okay.
Saturday, April the 19th of this year.
Oh, wonderful. And I know I've got your contact info. If anyone wants to contact you at your email, cmurphy at firmfoundations Thing that we've talked about here, whether it's to get that free resource like the Dare Lead Magnet, or knowing more about this event that's coming up next month, definitely reach out. As well as, hey, if you're interested in booking a consultation with Carolyn to talk a little bit more about how can you work with her, please reach out to her again via email, cmurphy@firmfoundationsco.com. Oh my goodness. So many great things that were shared today. I so appreciate it, Carolyn. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you're so wonderful. And I know we talked a lot about the Lord, and there may be some of you that are listening that don't know him, that haven't said yes to him. You're kicking it around, you're not really sure. Look, time is short on earth. I'm just going to say that, right? And we get to choose where we're going to spend eternity. Are we going to spend eternity in heaven with the Lord? Or are we going to a really fiery place? And I would hate for anyone to go to that fiery place. But these are two options, right? So you get to choose. And the Lord came, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son so that all would know him and not perish. I'm paraphrasing that a little bit. So what I'm saying in that, and what the word is saying in that, is that Jesus died on the cross for every single person, for all, not some. And there isn't anything that you have to get right in your life to say yes to him. I've known so many people over the years where they're like, I got to get this right over here before. And I'm like, no, you just say yes to him and he'll make it all right for you. He'll clean all that stuff up, right? And that is a lie from Satan that says, oh, you've got to come to the Lord perfect. You've got to come to the Lord with no issues. And my response to that is, if you think you need to come to the Lord all perfect and having it all together, what then can he do for you? Because you're doing it in your own strength and it won't be lasting. But the Lord is the one that can help you through all of that. And I know for me personally, and I'm probably speaking for you as well, Carolyn, that once I said yes to the Lord, my life has never been the same. Now, it wasn't free and clear of trials and tribulations, but I had a peace in going through the trials because I knew the Lord was with me and I knew that he was in it with me as well. And I wasn't alone. And he provided a way out. And in those trials, I actually learned so much and I grew so much. I wouldn't be the person that I am today had I not had those experiences and be able to see even more what he did, how he was there, how he was caring for me in all of that. The enemy would want you to be alone and isolated. And the Lord would say, come to me. My arms are wide open to receive you right now. And if any of you have any questions about, well, what does that look like? What's the next step? Please reach out to me. I love talking to people about this. My website is trueyouministries.com, or you can call me at 626-461-3344 or email me at info@trueyouministries.com. And again, remember to reach out to Carolyn if you want to work with her. cmurphy@firmfoundationsco.com is her website. And again, Carolyn, thank you so much for being on the show.
I again appreciate the opportunity.
All right. And to everyone that's been watching and listening, I pray that the Lord would bless you abundantly today. You've been listening to True You Ministries with me, Stacy Echeverria, your pastoral counselor. I'm a licensed pastoral counselor whose own journey has taught me the importance of having a safe place to discuss the harder issues of life. You can learn more about me and my heartfelt desire to help people, much like yourself, who may be at a place of pain and confusion by calling me at 626-461-3344. That's 626-461-3344. Or feel free to email me at info@trueyouministries.com. That email once again is info@trueyouministries.com. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and may God richly bless you.